This week on the Computer Chronicles, part 2 of our special coverage of the ETRE conference in Lisbon. We'll show you the latest speech technology from Dragon Systems and L&H. You'll hear about the newest frontier in computer intelligence, visual recognition. Bill Gates gives us some insights into the Microsoft culture, and we'll give you some inside tips on the future of Silicon Valley stock prices. The European Technology Roundtable and Exhibition coming up next on the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by PeopleSoft, a global supplier of enterprise application software for business, education, and government. PeopleSoft, we work in your world. By TechWeb for up-to-the-minute technology news. And by TVA, Television Associates, bridging the worlds of computers and video with DVD authoring and MPEG encoding services.
This may look like the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, but it's not. It's the 25th of April Bridge here in Portugal, spanning the Tejo River, which separates Lisbon from its southern suburbs. For hundreds of years, the people here could only cross this river by boat, but the bridge changed all of that, opening up new communications links between the people who lived on the opposite sides of this river. Well, in the technology field, probably speech and handwriting are the major bridges being built right now between people and computers, and this new human-machine interface is a big topic of discussion here at the ETRE conference.
You know, we continue to be in the situation where speech is not far away. You know, I saw, last time I was at your conference, I saw the latest Dragon demo, and, you know, I'm always impressed at the progress that's being made. You know, L&H is doing good work, Dragon's doing good work. It's kind of a crazy field right now. IBM's basically giving away their technology. And because it's a faddish industry, AT&T decided, hey, IBM's giving it away, okay, they'll give it away. I'm not saying it's the best or anything, but the framework of how things work are sure amazing, where, you know, literally hundreds of millions of dollars of research, at least in a certain way, you know, people say, well, maybe we'll get a good press article, let's put out a free developer kit. So it's very hard to predict when this stuff will become mainstream. It absolutely will, and I think it's safe to say it will within 5 years.
In fact, speech recognition technology has really taken off this year, with new and improved retail products from IBM, L&H, and Dragon Systems. The new Dragon product, called Naturally Speaking, lets you speak continuously into your computer, essentially dictating as you might to a secretary.
Dragon Systems speech recognition software is revolutionizing the way people work with their computers, period.
You can also dictate directly into a recording device if you're on the road, and then later play back the dictation into your PC. There are 3 versions of the Dragon software, ranging in price from $50 to $150. While this demo shows the microphone replacing the keyboard as an input device, Dragon co-founder Janet Baker says the real driver for better speech recognition will be the tremendous growth in handheld devices.
We do not look at having speech as being the means by which you throw away keyboards. I think that that's kind of silly. We see that speech is an important complementary tool to add to your mouse, your keyboard, your digitizing tablet, whatever else you have. And Dragon makes it especially easy to move between whatever different input modalities you have, and also the output modalities. But as we see the form factor shrink with you know, smaller devices, which are becoming ever more prevalent and more popular, the keyboards are too small to use. And we sometimes say that you don't want to enter text by toothpick. Indeed, the only way that you're ever going to get a great deal of data into a small device is by talking.
L&H, formerly Learned and OSPI and now owned in part by Microsoft, showed off its newest continuous speech recognition product called Voice Express Plus. The amazing thing about this demo is that the woman using it has a foreign accent, and yet it still works extremely well.
Today's date, select this line, make it bold, make it bigger by 2 points, make the font size bigger by 2, go to the end of the line, new line, I have a present for you, period. You are looking at Voice Express, period. With Voice Express, it's extremely easy to create new line, documents, bullet add, make this line blue, new line, emails, new line, letters, new line, whatever you want, new line, as you can see, comma, unbullet that, make this line magenta, I can say whatever I want to do, period. It is all possible with the software, period. Go to the beginning of the document, Insert menu, Picture, from File, Insert, center that, down 3 lines, go to the beginning of the line, select the next 4 lines, add borders, center that.
ART, an Israeli company, is another leader in the field of new input technologies. They're limiting their speech work to command and control functions such as mobile telephony. In this mock-up of a car phone environment, the woman is using their Smart Speak technology to program the phone to recognize a name, so that all she has to do to place a call in the future is speak the name.
Ariella. So now I've put my name into the machine, and now when I want to get into the car and dial, I'll just press Ariella, and it'll dial the number.
The developers at ART are putting most of their resources into handwriting recognition.
This is a CE platform. What we can see here is a keyboardless machine and another palm size that has no keyboard. So obviously what you would do is prefer to write straight on the screen because you don't have a keyboard option.
This is a demonstration of their Smart Writer software, shown here on a laptop screen so it's easier for you to see.
I can write naturally on the board anywhere I want, upper or lowercase. And the recognition will know to take it to where the cursor is. I can use a graphic shortcut like a happy face for happy. I can write anywhere on the screen. I can write very big, or I can write very small. And the engine will still know to recognize it and take it to where the cursor is. It'll work on all applications of Windows 95 and CE. So I can choose on Excel one of these boxes. I can even write the numbers one on top of the other.
The ART system, unlike graffiti, lets you use your natural writing style, and the software adapts to you rather than the other way around. Handwriting recognition seems easier than speech recognition, but it is more difficult than speech, not because of the technology, but because of the psychology.
Handwriting is a case where you have a conscious model of what's going on. If we misrecognize your handwriting, you can look back and say, that E looked like a C, or that C looked like an O. And you can even subconsciously start to do a better job dealing with the system. Whereas with speech, and somebody can prove me wrong on this, but a lot of what goes on in terms of your context modeling and your acoustic modeling is very subconscious. And so when the system makes a mistake, it's not like you say to yourself, oh, yeah, that diphthong, I got to be better about how I do that. You know, your patterns have been put in place. So people are, as a result, people are very demanding of speech accuracy because errors that people can understand why versus errors that appear almost random in nature, they have less of a tolerance for.
Gates believes that intelligent devices of the near future will in fact be able to do more than just understand spoken and written words. He says the next exciting step is visual recognition.
I'm also, I think, more optimistic than most people about visual recognition, simply because the USB cameras are going to get so cheap, and you're going to have them for a variety of things, including video conferencing type things, that just putting a little bit of software in there that recognizes people and gestures and moods, and maybe reads your lips to send a few extra bits to the speech input system. It's not going to be that hard. And you have players in this game like Intel who are desperate for an application that takes CPU power and delivers user benefit as a result of that. So they're going to be in there with a little extra push saying, come on, let's get these CPU-intensive applications out there.
One of the obvious highlights of this conference was the appearance by Bill Gates. Gates always packs them in because everyone wants to know what the great man thinks about the future of the computer industry. And perhaps they just like being in the same room with one of the richest men in the world. Gates seemed unusually calm, even happy at this conference, and it kind of caught everyone off guard, even one of his harshest critics, who says the fuss about Gates has probably come too late.
The punishments that Bill Gates is undergoing now are for behavior of several years in the past. He's trying to change Microsoft. His speech yesterday made me very optimistic that we may see a Microsoft, people have said a kinder and gentler. I don't care about that. They can be as aggressive and competitive as they want to be, but they must become technically competent. And we're seeing that change. We're seeing Microsoft invest in that. We're seeing good people go to Microsoft. We're seeing them using Java. So I'm very optimistic that no matter what the money-making front of Microsoft says, stay with Windows, in reality, they're bringing out good software that will benefit everybody. So, you know, Bill Gates is paying the price today for the way he behaved 4 or 5 years ago.
Bill Gates himself gave a rare inside view of the Microsoft culture.
Beyond believing in software, if there's a second fundamental part of the Microsoft culture, it's to say to ourselves, is this the day that we're being eclipsed? I mean, you know, we lived through IBM being eclipsed. We lived through Wang being eclipsed. I grew up using digital computers. I worshiped digital. I thought, oh wow, someday I'm going to meet Ken Olsen. But by the time I met him, he wasn't really Ken Olsen anymore. So, you know, that's what it's all about. And if you don't think Microsoft has had any failures, then that's a very nice thing to say, but it's not true. And we go out of our way to hire people who've been in experience, very tough business experiences, where you have to make those hard trade-offs. And so, you know, we are in the customer feedback loop. We're seeing our shortcomings all the time. You know, the support call that takes 2 hours, the opaqueness of our interface. We are very good at giving ourselves a hard time about, you know, the things that we're going to have to fix to be able to stay around and play a role.
And what is Bill Gates' worst nightmare?
You know, the worst dream is to be part of a company that's slowly sinking into mediocrity. I think that's probably the worst dream one can have, is just, you know, you get slower, you hire people who are less good, you're more bureaucratic, and you're just sclerotic. And you sink underneath the waves, slowly but surely, still being one hell of a cash cow as you do it. That's kind of a nightmare.
So are we seeing a kinder, gentler Bill Gates and a more temperate Microsoft?
The notion of a kinder, gentler Microsoft doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think gentle is a word that belongs in the same sentence with the word Microsoft. So you're not going to see them be that kind of company. They are strategic players, and when they see it necessary to project a public image of more accommodation, they will do that. But it's strategic, it's thought out. So much of what they do is so deeply thought out.
Indeed, David Kirkpatrick thinks we will probably see an even tougher Microsoft in the future, thanks in part to Gates' decision to step down as president and turn that job over to his second in command, Steve Ballmer.
He is a superbly aggressive competitor, and in fact, if you look at a lot of the complaints that are being made against Microsoft and the accusations of anti-competitive behavior, a very high percentage of them probably flow from Steve Ballmer's direction as much as from Bill Gates, because he is as competitive as Bill, if not more so. And I would say both of them are two of the most competitive people I've ever met in my life.
That cliff you see over there is the most western piece of land in all of Europe, Cape Roca here in Portugal. You can't get any closer to the United States and still be standing on European soil. This is perhaps a good place to make the point that the Atlantic Ocean is shrinking every single day, certainly in the high-tech field, as we see more and more technology innovations coming into the U.S. from Europe, and the growth of technology partnerships between American and European companies.
There are a lot of new companies now technology startups happening. We see that Europe is really, in an upswing. If we look at the mobile telecommunications industry, Europe is now leading with people like Nokia and Ericsson. If we look at the software industry, SAP, BAN, people like Ixos, smaller companies, software companies that are coming up. If you look at smart cards, people like GemPlus and so on are really leading in that field. A lot of investments are being made into biotech and so on. So a lot of things are happening in Europe from that side also that makes this, very attractive.
Well, you have to remember that Europe is a larger market than the United States. The United States is roughly 280 million people. I believe the European Economic Community will have about 370 million. They're all smart and hardworking and just as able as anybody in the United States. They want to have a high standard of living. They want to have all the things that we want to have. So I think they're going to be a very potent economic force. And they're really playing catch-up ball in terms of technology and the investments in technology and personal computers. They're way ahead of us, by the way, in telephony and cellular phones. And so it's not catch-up all the way, but certainly in terms of personal computers and the use of computers in business.
The new unified Europe, the economic monetary union, and the common currency, the euro, are all signs that Europe may indeed become a bigger player in the global computer business and a bigger opportunity for high-tech investors. Compact's European head, Andreas Barth, thinks that software may be the real strength for Europe in the future.
An SAP today, ranks number 4 in software, but is clearly by far the number 1 in enterprise applications, packaged software there. So there's no reason why other European companies could not take the lead. And I think that the 80s was the area of Japan, the 90s obviously is the area of the US, and I have some hope and my projection is that Europe could be the leading region in the next decade.
In Asia, there are lots of obvious questions about whether Japan and the other Asian dragons can get back on the high growth track. But TriGem CEO Young-tae Lee is optimistic, especially about the role of his country, Korea, where students are now required to study computer science.
Now, Korean government decided to put computer as the mandatory subject and put it the entrance examination. It will act as a dynamite. So all Korean students and family will study computer. So in 10 years, I think Korea will be the most computer literate nation in the whole world.
I'm not as optimistic as Dr. Lee about the future of Korea as he is. The future of Asia, Japan has a financial infrastructure which is far stronger than Korea. Korea's wealth is detained by 7 or 8 big companies. No modern economy can work with 7 or 8 companies which are having 70% of the GDP. So it cannot work. Korea today has to reform, to change, to transform its economy by creating diversity. The whole thing about tomorrow's world and today's world, and one of the successes of America, is that the small guy, the small company, the small innovative firm has a chance. In Korea, you don't have a chance.
And what about the obviously volatile U.S. high-tech market? Does a small startup still have a chance there? The Red Herring's Tony Perkins says 1999 could be lethal for internet startups in particular.
Well, we think that 1999 is going to be a huge shakeout year for internet companies. When we saw the hundreds of internet companies go public in the last 4 years, many of them, most of them, if not almost all of them, were not making money. But what they told Wall Street is 1999 was the year that they were going to start making money. Well, our prediction is that come around the first and second quarters of 1999, when many of these companies won't show the profits that they promised, that's when you're going to see an implosion in the market. Then it'll be really a case where it'll be survival of the fittest, and only the fittest will survive.
Well, here's the problem. I'll guarantee you that there's probably 1 or 2 or 3 companies out there that are worth what investors are paying for them. Like Microsoft. If you had, Microsoft has been trading at crazy prices almost forever, but it's clearly always been worth it. So somewhere out there, I don't know, is it Yahoo? Is it Amazon? Is it CNET? I'm not sure which of those companies is going to be the company that's worth it. But my guess is out of the whole internet space, there may be no more than 2 or 3 companies that are going to prove to be able to grow into their current market caps.
But the internet changes everything. It's a new set of economics because it's a new set of costs. It's cheaper to communicate with an individual or a business over the internet than any method we've ever had in history before. And it's that changing cost that gives people a huge anticipation that companies are going to be very successful and very profitable. Investors who are pushing the curve on internet stocks are betting way out in the future. They're betting that these companies are going to grow into those stock prices. That, of course, makes the stocks very susceptible to intermediate disappointments.
But a low stock price is not necessarily a bad thing for a startup company, at least according to someone who ought to know, Bill Gates.
I run a long-term company, and if somebody wants to come to work for a company today, a low stock price is good for that person, because then, to the degree that they increase the sales and profitability, you don't have multiple shrinkage coming in to work against their good contribution. This used to be a Microsoft secret, but then Bill Gurley went and gave a speech about it, and so now we have to admit competitors who try to push up their stock price show themselves to be short-term players.
One of the reasons high-tech stocks have been such high flyers is their ability to lure top talent through attractive stock option plans. But when the market goes down, those stock options can become dangerous.
Well, the problem gets to be that the employees who got sold in the first place on the importance of coming to the company for the value of the stock options, those employees have almost become momentum investors with their own careers. And so when they see the stock drop, they go, well, I can't make my money here. I will go to this next startup where I can do that. And as a result, when a company's stock drops, it runs the risk of losing a significant amount of its best people. And those are the keys to a software company. So I think that companies then struggle. Then they have a difficult time recruiting new people to replace them. There's learning curves. So it's one of the reasons that once a company stumbles, or once its stock price stumbles, those aren't necessarily the same thing, it frequently starts a downward spiral that's very difficult to pull out of.
In the view of Bill Gates, all high-tech stocks are overpriced, including Microsoft stock.
In general, I have a view of all technology companies being overvalued, including everyone, including my own. But I've had that view for about 10 years now, when the values, in retrospect, actually were reasonable. So I am not paid according to my ability to predict stock prices. I thought Microsoft stock price had achieved its maximum so many times it's unbelievable. Even though our business can grow and grow and grow, as a CEO, you don't want a high multiple. At least if you're a long-term player, you don't want a high multiple.
Finally, it has become obvious that market value in the high-tech field is often enhanced by cool corporate names. Mitch Kurtzman, CEO of Sybase, a company which has had its problems of late, has decided that the best way to pump up his company is to rename it.
Names are important. People are if you look at who's successful today, particularly in the stock market. So we've been thinking, how do you get Sybase more successful? So clearly you could go Sybase.com. That's one option, but that may be too common. The small letter I is becoming very important now. For instance, look what Apple has done with the iMac. So we think maybe iBase would be a good idea. But my favorite is, if you look at perhaps the most successful company in the internet space today, I think we should change the name to Wazoo and make our marketing slogan, Up Your Wazoo. I think it's a winner.
For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Stewart Cheifet at the ETRE conference in Lisbon.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by PeopleSoft, a global supplier of enterprise application software for business, education, and government. PeopleSoft, we work in your world. By TechWeb for up-to-the-minute technology news. And by TVA, Television Associates, bridging the worlds of computers and video with DVD authoring and MPEG encoding services.
To purchase a videotape copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-310-7850. Please specify the show number and the topic.
Next week on the Computer Chronicles, the Y2K problem. We'll show you how to check your computer's CMOS and BIOS for possible year 2000 glitches. We'll look at some software that examines your applications and files to make sure they're Y2K compliant. We'll talk to Microsoft about some reported Y2K problems with Windows, and we'll search the web for good and bad information about what you should do to deal with Y2K. Plus, we'll look at the mainframe side of the problem. Can you count on power, water, money, and safe air travel on January 1? It's all coming up next week on the Computer Chronicles.